aquatic biologist and permit specialist with the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation. I've been here about 2 years now, and the main role in my job is aquatic nuisance control permitting. And then to my left, we have Jenny Austin, who's our new program manager. She has been with us a little over a month now, and so she's been great to have come on board. And then I'll let the folks to my right introduce themselves.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Jeremy Jones. I'm a board member of the Lake St. Catherine Association.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jeff Crandall. I'm the chair of our Aquatic Nuisance Control Committee on the Lake St. Catherine Association. I've been on the board for about 20 years, and I've had the pleasure of growing up on Lake St. Catherine, been here ever since.
And Mark Bello, I'm a Director of Technical Services with Solitude Lake Management. We've done the herbicide work on Lake St. Catherine.
So I'm going to hand it over to Jenny Austin, who's going to kind of go over the meeting rules and the purpose of the meeting.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jenny Austin. I started in this role a little over a month ago, so I'm brand new to the role and brand new to Vermont. So I just wanted to talk about my team here. We are serving as civil servants, and to me, I take that very seriously. I want you to know that we are here to represent your interests, all of your interests, and to find a balance between them all. That's the purpose of this meeting, and I'm really excited that so many people showed up to voice your concerns or your support, and we're just I'm excited to be a part of this. This is my first public meeting, so the rules. I've been told that if you want to speak, if you're online, that you should stay muted until you are let into the room, and then you're automatically muted, and then to be unmuted, one of our presenters will unmute you. But we're going to have the people that submitted comments already ahead of time, they're going to be first to be able to submit their comments. And then followed by the people present today. Yeah, anybody that signed up today. Then we'll move through the list of, if we have time. And anybody can enter a comment into the chat if you're online. You can also submit your comments in writing. So, did I miss anything?
We're gonna have 3 minutes. Every person that's commenting is gonna have 3 minutes, and Jenny.
And I have to be the bad guy. So, but like I mentioned before, any comments that you can't finish verbally, you are welcome to submit them in writing. So. And at the end? And ask questions at the end. Did I cover everything?
Yeah, and we will do our best, this panel here, we'll do our best to answer any questions that do happen to come up. Sometimes we may not have the answer on hand, and so those comments, again, all comments will be responded to in a response summary when a final decision is made. So if we don't have an answer for you right this second, we'll have an answer for you whenever a final decision is made.
Did you already tell everybody where the restrooms are and everything?
No, that's a good point. I think they're right there.
Okay. Yeah. Restrooms right there. We have some waters and snacks in the back too, if anyone needs it.
All right. Thanks, Jenny. So yeah, to start, I'm going to hand it over to the Lake St. Catherine Association. They put together a presentation, just briefly going over kind of what the Lake St. Catherine Association is and what these projects are that they're working on. So I'm going to hand it over to Jeremy.
Do I need a mic or?
Yeah. So the people online can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can balance everything. Could you do the slides for me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully everybody online can see that.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. We can go to the next slide. All right, thanks for everybody being here this evening. We're going to talk briefly about what we do, what the association is, and what our milfoil control program is. So we're the Lake St. Catherine Association. We've been a nonprofit organization, and we were formed in August 31st of 1953. So that means we are have been stewards of the lake for over 70 years. The mission of the Lake St. Catherine Association is the preservation, protection, and maintenance of the lake. So some of the things that we do, our two main focus projects are water quality improvement. So we are working on a watershed action plan for the lake. That should be done within the next 6 months or so. So we're working on that with Poultney Meadowy. There is a stormwater master plan around the lake. We're working on that as well. We got a grant for that to do a number of projects around the lake to limit stormwater from carrying phosphorus and other pollutants into the lake. We've got a program called the LakeWise program. That's a partnership with the DEC, and that works with homeowners around the lake. And we also work on stormwater projects on their property so that phosphorus and pollutants and sediments aren't going into the lake from their property. We also work with the state on lay monitoring, and we do some water testing. We also do aquatic invasive species prevention and control. We've got a couple of programs that we do for that. So we've got the Vermont Invasive Patroller Program that we started last year. So we work with volunteers around the lake, and we check areas that might be a place where aquatic invasive species might have entered the lake, like the boat launch in Wells, or at the boat access area at the state park. We also do and fund the boat launch greeter program. So we've done that since the early 2000s. We fund that program where we have folks that are trained to look at vessels and trailers that are coming into the lake for aquatic invasive species that might have been brought from another lake. So we want to make sure that we keep those out of the lake. And then we also have our milfoil control program where we work to keep milfoil at controllable levels in the lake. So our new 5-year permit, that's why we're here this evening. Back in 2024, March of 2024, we submitted our application. And in October 30th, a couple weeks ago, our permit was approved by the DEC. And that went through a thorough technical review with experts from Fish and Wildlife, Department of Health, the Wetlands Program, Drinking Water and Groundwater and Protection Division, Department of Forest and Parks and Recreation. And with all that consultation, the DEC issued their draft approval of our permit. So we'd like to thank the local towns for their support, the DEC for their support and guidance, and our members in the lake community for their support. While we're talking about this, we also do the DASH program, which are the folks that work on the lake as divers. They go down to the bottom and they handpick the milfoil from the lake bed, and they have a suction tube where they place that in the tube and it gets taken up to the boat to be removed from the lake. That permit is for 10 years, and we got that 5 years ago, so that permit is ongoing. So let's talk a bit about our milfoil control program. Yep, next slide. Thanks, Roland. So we're going to talk about briefly what milfoil is, a history of milfoil in the lake, what our control program is, some recent results, and what our yearly process is, and then we'll conclude with our presentation. So a lot of you folks who are here know what Eurasian water milfoil is. There's a patch of it right there. It's an aquatic invasive species. It doesn't belong here in North America. It has no natural controls. It can reach the surface in 20 feet of water. It grows and spreads extremely quickly, forming dense surface mats. Very tiny, small fragments can create new plants when they break off and go to other places around the lake. And it was introduced into the lake in the early 1970s. So why do we work so hard to control milfoil? This is from the Lake Champlain Basin Program. They talk about how milfoil decreases native plant diversity by outcompeting our native aquatic plants. Milfoil can decrease light penetration, habitat complexity, and oxidization. It can increase sedimentation, nutrient loading, and accelerates eutrophication. It affects the pH and temperature levels, and has been identified as not good for wildlife habitat. So there's just a quick picture. I'm sure we all know what it looks like, but there it is. There's some milfoil on the left, and on the right is milfoil mixed in with some of our native plants in the lake. So we want to go through a quick history of milfoil control on the lake. So I already mentioned that it was introduced in the early 1970s. By 1979, it was causing an issue around the lake, and it had spread quickly throughout the lake. So in 1979, the Lakes and Catherine Association purchased Hungry Harvey. Many of you who've been at the lake for many years will remember Hungry Harvey. And there were also multiple other harvesting machines that were purchased and run at the same time all around the lake. But after many years of using these mechanical harvesting machines, we noticed that they were not providing control, and they were actually contributing to the spread around the lake of milfoil. As noted in multiple publications from the DEC and other studies, mechanical harvesting can create plant fragmentation, and those fragments can travel to other places around the lake to seed new plants. Also, if you recall the photo I showed earlier where there was milfoil combined with native plants, if the harvesting machine goes over those, it cuts off the top of those plants, the milfoil will grow faster than the native plants. So they will outcompete them and eventually create a monoculture of milfoil in that area. Mechanical harvesting also has an impact on wildlife and water quality. I won't read the quote there, but you can read that, how it can affect young fishes, even adult game fish, as it grazes through the littoral zone. That's a quote from John Madsden from a publication of the North American Lake Management Society, NALMS it's called. Thank you. The Lakes and Catherine Association also tried benthic barriers or bottom mats. They're very hard to deal with, and they are not selective to milfoil, just like the harvesting machine. It kills anything that's under that mat. So our mussels, which are very beneficial for the lake, our native mussels, lots of insects and things that are living in there, our native plants that are under that mat, they all are killed. They're very hard to deal with, but they were also not providing control of milfoil. Other biological or other things that were attempted, biological, structural, powered, all were not providing control of milfoil, both in Lake St. Catherine and other lakes in Vermont. So what's our goal of the milfoil control program? So knowing that eradication is highly improbable, the goal is to keep milfoil at containable and manageable levels around the lake. So our program works to empower and educate the lake community so they can contribute to the effort and help to stop the spread of milfoil, to use safe and effective tools that are available and funded by membership contributions, grants, and allocations from the town. And also it benefits from multiple water quality improvement projects being worked on in Lake St. Catherine because they are reducing phosphorus going into the lake, which is what the plants can use, and it can create excessive plant growth for excessive phosphorus entering the lake. So this is what we do for the milfoil control program. Every year we have a Stop the Spread flyer and education through meetings and publications. We always show what you can do to help the effort and what our treatment program would be. This is from this year, where you can see in green are the dashed locations and in red are the small areas where we did spot treatment. We do volunteer cleanup. This has been pretty successful. Folks around the lake are working to get milfoil out of the lake whenever they see it near their dock, floating around the lake, depositing weeds on the float that's in the channel, and we pick those up. And then this is our dash team. So you can see our diver in the bottom left. He will go down. They hand pick the milfoil from the bottom by the roots, and there's a suction tube that they use, and they place that piece of milfoil into the suction tube. It goes up onto the boat into a catch basin, and they put it in buckets to get it out of the lake. Our other tool that we're here talking about this evening is herbicide spot treatments. This is an example from Lake Iroquois that happened a couple of years ago. On the left is pre-treatment, and on the right is post-treatment. And the other thing I've mentioned before is our water quality improvement projects. Lake-wise, Stormwater Master Plan, Watershed Action Plan, these are all programs that are working to limit phosphorus going into the lake, which can lead to excessive plant growth. Here are our partners in this program. So we've got the local towns, the DEC Watershed Management Division, Sinclair Commercial Diving Services, our great DASH team. They work at our lake and a few other lakes. Arrowwood Environmental, they do our multi-day, very comprehensive plant survey in the fall. We just got a copy of that, and that'll be posted on our website probably tomorrow or the weekend, so you can see that. What they do is they go around and look at all of our plants and make a survey of what plants are at the almost 200 data points, GPS points that we have around the lake. And Solitude Lake Management, Mark is here representing them this evening. So here's our process that we use to every year when we do our program. So in early May, we do a spring milfoil survey. So we go around the lake and we mark GPS points where we see milfoil, and we mark down some densities. Then using the data collected from that spring survey and then the fall aquatic survey that I just mentioned from the previous year, guidance from the DEC and our DASH team, we make a map and submit that to the DEC for approval. So once that is reviewed by all the departments at the DEC, the lake community is informed of our plan via mailings and signage. If a treatment is taking place, we also send out emails, we update our website, our Facebook postings, and our newsletter to let folks know what we're doing this year. Other notifications will obviously include that Stop the Spread flyer that we talked about, and we have a public milfoil control meeting every year. And if needed, spot treatments will take place in June. The DASH team begins hand pulling less dense areas, but not using the full DASH boat system. That's not allowed until July 1st. So they'll go around to areas where it's less dense, and they will hand pick milfoil there using mesh bags. Sorry, hold on. And then to complete the circle, in the fall, Arrowwood Environmental conducts that comprehensive survey and gives us the report of what they observed for the plants and mapping. And again, that'll be on our website this weekend. So I wanted to give you 2 years of our program results. So in 2023, we did not have a spot treatment. The DASH team, this again is 23, DASH team started in June. Hand pulling and then began operations on July 1st. Last year they pulled 1,057 buckets. Those buckets are 17.5 gallons each. And then there's a link. That's the link if you want to see our plant surveys. That's the link right there. So you can see the map right there. Those are the locations that were identified as potential DASH areas. And then the location shows you where the DASH team actually worked. So you can see they spent a lot of time up in North Bay, where it was most dense, and also where it was most dense in the channel. Those were where they spent the majority of the time last year.
Explain the different colors.
The orange is more dense areas of milfoil, and the yellow to green are less dense areas of milfoil.
That's just based on our plant survey.
That's not necessarily where the DASH team worked.
Yep, the DASH team worked in any area that has a bucket total. Oh, sorry. So for example, area C, we had 615 buckets pulled, and area C is up there in the North Bay. And you can see that was a denser area of milfoil because it's orange. Some of the other areas were sparse, so they might have quickly been able to take care of that area by hand pulling. Yep, thanks, Nolan. So here's our results from this year. We had 7 small spot treatments, about 34 acres in red in this particular map. And the green area, which was always our focus, is our DASH program. That's the green areas where they worked. This year they worked in the areas that are listed there. They covered 38 total acres this year and only 269 buckets of milfoil this year. And at the end of August, our DASH team reported that our native plants were very abundant and healthy, and that milfoil growth was at very low levels, which was indicative of the lower bucket count this total compared to last. So we were very happy to hear the DASH team's report at the end of the season.
Just one thing I just wanted to add, if you just note that no treatment in 2020 because it wasn't, DASH was sufficient to keep it under control. That was not the case in 2020. Even in 2020, 3.2% of the lake, the area with ProcellaCOR. So one of the things we do, we're very using ProcellaCOR, and we only use it as secondary tool, DASH, with DASH being our primary approach.
Just wrapping it up here, we want to let you folks know that so these efforts that we just talked about have resulted in the lowest percentage of milfoil cover and frequency of occurrence in the lake since the mid-2000s. Also, just as importantly, we have seen many species of our native aquatic plants that have been suppressed by milfoil growth have increased in frequency of occurrence, which is great to see. Folks who are familiar with the lake will know that our Illinois pondweed has come back very well. Lake St. Catherine has over 30 native aquatic plants, which are important and necessary for a healthy lake ecology. Our efforts are focused on reducing the amount of milfoil in the lake so that our native aquatic plants can grow as they normally would. And that's why we work so hard. And finally, just want to let you folks know the LSCA has always employed evidence-based decision-making when evaluating our lake-related issues, and we continue to do so with our milfoil control program, working with the state, lake scientists and experts, and following the science and the data, and evaluating the results of our efforts show we are doing the right things for the long-term health of the lake. So we'd like to thank the towns, our partners, our membership in the lake community, and that's our milfoil control program website. We encourage folks to go there and read more about it. Thank you.
Quick logistics, just reminder to use the microphone and if an audience member.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. So hopefully everybody can hear me when I speak directly into the microphone. Okay. All right. All right. Well, thank you, Jeremy, and others from the Lake St. Catherine Association. Again, my name's Olin Reed. I'm an aquatic biologist with the Vermont Agency of Natural Resources. I'm going to go over a little bit about kind of the Aquatic Nuisance Control Permitting Program, how it works, our internal review procedure, and then a little kind of what the progress looks like right now from the state's perspective on the Lake St. Catherine Association's integrated pest management project. So first off, the regulations for this aquatic nuisance control exist for reviewing projects proposing to control an aquatic nuisance in waters of the state. And so waters of the state includes basically any surface water in the state of Vermont. And so it includes public lakes and private ponds as well. Just as a note, removing aquatic nuisances by hand does not require a permit, but anything further than the removal by hand typically does require a permit. And an aquatic nuisance just simply means it's an undesirable or an excessive substance or populations that interfere with recreational potential aquatic habitats, and that includes rooted aquatic plants, animal and algal populations. And just as a note, non-biological entities like sediment and nutrients, they're not considered aquatic nuisances under the statute. And so the Agency of Natural Resources, the Lakes and Ponds program, is tasked with overseeing these permitting regulations, and so that's my job. Typically, the agency does not actively apply or carry out aquatic nuisance control permits. There are some from 20, 30 years ago that we were involved with, but this day and age, we aren't actively involved in the permits themselves. I'll note here as well that the Department of Environmental Conservation and Fish and Wildlife do have the ability under 10 VSA 1456 to initiate what is called a rapid response general permit. It is completely separate from aquatic nuisance control permitting. It's a different permit. No project under this, it's considered an emergency permit. No project has ever actually been implemented under this permit. It's been in place since 2011, but again, it's never actually been implemented. So some brief overviews of aquatic nuisance control permitting and the application process. Under statute, anybody can submit an aquatic nuisance control application. And the process is directed by statute, and that's 10 VSA Chapter 170. I'm not going to read the entire statute to you, but you're welcome to check it out. And this is a different piece of statute compared to aquatic nuisance control permitting. And that's just, the process is different than the statute itself. And so kind of what the process looks like from our end. We receive an application, again, from anybody can apply for these. An administrative review takes place, and that is basically making sure that all the boxes are signed correctly, and that there's an application fee, making sure that fee is paid. Once that application is deemed administratively complete, it's posted to the environmental notice bulletin. This is a bulletin that anybody can sign up to review. You can go on it right now and look at all of the documents and all of the related information for this application if you'd like. And then once that's posted to the environmental notice bulletin, a technical review begins. And so that is where my review starts. And it also includes what's known as the internal review procedure. And I'm going to explain the internal review procedure here in a minute. Once that internal review procedure and that technical review are complete, we submit a draft decision. And then there is a public notice period. And so that's where we are today right now. The public notice period is typically 30 days. And that is public meetings can be held during that notice period. And I'll note that any comments again made today are a part of that public notice period. They will go into a response summary and be responded to once that final decision is made. After the final decision is made, there's a 30-day period for appeals if anybody chooses to appeal them. So the review criteria under statute, this is 10 VSA 1455D. And again, this is on our website. You're welcome to check it out. But these are the 5 statutory criteria that an application for the use of a pesticide in waters of the state are required to meet in order to be approved. And so 1 is there's no reasonable non-chemical alternative available. 2 is there is an acceptable risk to the non-target environment. There is a negligible risk to public health. 4 is a long-range management plan has been developed, which incorporates a schedule of pesticide minimization. And then 5 is there's a public benefit to be achieved from the application of a pesticide, or in the case of a pond located entirely on a landowner's property, no undue adverse effect upon the public good. That little subsection doesn't apply here. Obviously, this is a large public body of water. And so what does the internal review procedure look like? So the Lakes and Ponds program, we're not the experts on everything, and so we solicit comments from various experts across the state to review the application for the following statutory findings. So remember, there are 5 statutory findings. We request comments to be made on 3 of those. And that is, there's an acceptable risk to the non-target environment, there's a negligible risk to public health, and then the public benefit statute. And the intent of this procedure is to get state experts to review an application through the lens of their expertise. Like I said, we're not experts on everything. I'm not an expert on public health, and so I reach out to folks that are experts in public health for their review of these projects. This procedure also helps to clarify how these experts can participate in the review process, and it ensures that a decision is not in conflict with other regulations or the goals and missions of other departments. And then we also want to be transparent with folks and the public and how those applications are reviewed. And so who do we solicit comments from? Under the application for a pesticide, we receive comments from Vermont Fish and Wildlife and their fisheries biologists, Vermont Fish and Wildlife's Natural Heritage Program, as well as Vermont Fish and Wildlife's Land and Facilities Program. We would solicit comments from the Department of Environmental Conservation's Wetlands Program and their Rivers Program, as well as their Monitoring and Assessment Program, and their Drinking Water and Groundwater Protection Program. We also work, again, very closely with the Vermont Department of Health, the Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation, and then we also work with Vermont Agency of Agricultural, Food, and Markets. The Agency of Agriculture, it says new as of 2024. They're not named in the internal review procedure, but we kind of added them to have another voice in these conversations. And so a little bit of history about ProcellaCOR and its use in Vermont. As of writing, I believe ProcellaCOR has been used 31 times since 2019 in 11 different lakes, and currently it's the only actively permitted aquatic herbicide in Vermont under Vermont Aquatic Nuisance Control statute. I'll note that there are 2 other pesticides that are used in aquatic systems in Vermont. They are for sea lamprey control, and they are TFM and baleicide, but they're not an herbicide. So each of those permits contain restrictions to protect at least 60% of the littoral zone annually. I should note here that ProcellaCOR has no EPA required use restrictions, but the agency does implement a recommendation for restriction on uses in all permits. And then the permittee is required to provide potable water to those who may be impacted. ProcellaCOR has been found to have a small potential for impact on non-target vegetation, and ANR completed a statistical analysis in 2021 and found no significant changes in species diversity. An internal agency review also found that the potential for acute and chronic risk to fish, aquatic invertebrates, amphibians, and other aquatic animals is considered low. And the agency has found that ProcellaCOR is an effective tool in the management of Eurasian water milfoil. And so I'm going to go through some of the comments that we've received from folks to kind of talk about each of these findings and how their expertise is used in these permits. Well, those shouldn't be blank. Well, let me, okay. Sorry about that. Here we are. So protection of non-target environment. So again, one of those statutory requirements that needs to be found is that there's an acceptable risk to the non-target environment. So whenever additional protections for non-targets are found during the internal review procedure, we work with whoever's made that finding to implement conditions to protect those non-target environments. So for instance, with this specific permit application, there was a species Ischnura kellicati, which is a lilypad forktail. It's a small mayfly that was identified to be, it's a rare species in the state of Vermont. Lake St. Catherine is one of the only known populations of it. It uses lily pads for coverage during its kind of juvenile stages. And so what we've done in this draft decision is implement a protection for lily pads to make sure that that rare species is not impacted by any sort of treatment. We also work with other biologists within Fish and Wildlife. So again, I mentioned that in this permit, there is a protection of 60% of the littoral zone. So annually, only up to 40% of the littoral zone of any of the 3 basins within Lake St. Catherine can be managed each year. And that includes the use of herbicides, dash, mechanical harvesting, any of the other projects that are going on in a lake. They all combined for this. And so we've done an internal review of the environmental toxicity of ProcellaCOR. And I've highlighted a couple sections here because I know this is a question a lot of folks have. And so just to note that the agency found that risk to, again, fish, aquatic invertebrates, amphibians, and other aquatic animals is considered low, and that the potential chronic toxicity of concern would be short-lived due to the dissipation in the environment. At the rate in which the applicant proposed to use the pesticide, which is 3 to 5 PDUs, the agency has determined that that poses an acceptable risk to the non-target aquatic biota and the environment. So human health, I know this is another question that lots of folks have regarding the use of pesticides. And so I'll note that the EPA label, and this is coming from the Vermont Department of Health, the EPA label does not include any use restrictions for the use in aquatic environments. And so that's just a quick note. That is all of Vermont Department of Health's first paragraph in their very long review. So I won't, it's on our website if you want to read through it all. But I'll note here that the Vermont Department of Health has reviewed the confidential statement of formulation, which includes all of the active ingredients in a pesticide as well as all the inert, not listed ingredients in a pesticide. And so that's highlighted there that they've reviewed the entire formulation of the pesticide. It's all the same thing. Yeah, it's Yeah, this is a standard response from Vermont Department of Health. This is the directly from our website. So that's just to be noted that this is a standard response that has come from the Vermont Department of Health. And so that's the review from Vermont Department of Health. They found that there were no impacts at the proposed rates on human health. In regards to the public good and how we can make conditions to protect the public good, we work again with Forest Parks and Recreation. There's obviously a large state park here on Lake St. Catherine. And they requested that treatments only occur on Monday and Tuesdays, so that any residue or anything like that, any concerns that folks that are visiting the state park may have over the use of ProcellaCOR is dissipated by the time of the weekend. And so we've implemented a restriction for this specific permit to only be used on Mondays or Tuesdays. And then just a little risk of Eurasian water milfoil. And this is just a quick graph of the cumulative aquatic invasive macrophyte introductions in Vermont from 2000 to 2023. And so this graph really shows that Eurasian water milfoil is and continues to be the state's most prominent invasive species. It's currently in over 100 water bodies across the state. And the Lake St. Catherine Association has kind of gone over already the impacts that Eurasian water milfoil can have. And so that's just a quick graph showing the kind of the spread of the plant. And then this is a quick graph just to show the total number of water bodies that have been treated since the year 2000 and the acres that are being treated with herbicides. And so you can see that there's a significant trend downward of the acreage treated annually in Vermont. And so Lake St. Catherine's integrated pest management plan. So methods of Eurasian water milfoil control in Lake St. Catherine since 1987 have included bottom barriers, diver-assisted suction harvesting, mechanical harvesting, and herbicides. The current permits that exist on Lake St. Catherine are the use of diver-assisted suction harvesting, and that's through the Lake St. Catherine Association. There is a singular bottom barrier general permit for a private landowner. And then there's a mechanical harvesting permit that is operated by the Lake St. Catherine Conservation Fund. So since 2001, trends have shown an increase in aquatic plant species richness within all three basins of Lake St. Catherine. And again, we work very closely with Vermont Fish and Wildlife. I know that St. Catherine is a very, a very well-loved fishery. And Vermont Fish and Wildlife biologists have determined that the fishery in Lake St. Catherine has not been damaged because of Eurasian water milfoil management, but it has changed. And so over the 20 years of data sampling that Vermont Fish and Wildlife has provided to us, it indicates an increase in smallmouth bass populations, but a decline in largemouth bass populations. Unfortunately, we do not have data that goes back prior to the introduction of Eurasian water milfoil in Lake St. Catherine back in 1978. And it should be noted here that the agency is charged with managing waters for all designated uses within the Clean Water Act. And so that includes boating, fishing, swimming, aesthetic uses, water supply, aquatic habitat, and aquatic biota. In 2023, Act 57 was implemented, and this was a study that was put together through the legislature for the review of aquatic nuisance control permitting. And so it was a team that went together and did this study, and it included myself, my section supervisor, Kimberly Jensen, who's here today, Vermont Fish and Wildlife. There were two University of Vermont professors, Vermont Department of Health, and then a House representative and a Senate representative. And so again, Vermont Fish and Wildlife, Vermont DEC, Vermont Department of Health, they were all involved in this review. And they ultimately found that the current process in which aquatic nuisance control permitting is done is adequate. They have made some recommendations, such as improving the definition of statutory terms, such as reasonable and acceptable risk. They also have made the recommendation to require that aquatic nuisance permits for pesticides are subject to type 2 procedures rather than type 3. This is something that's already done in rule, but it's not done in statute. And so that should just be noted that it's already in place, but they recommended that we just make the change in statute. And then again, for the use of pesticides in public waters, the committee recommended requiring that a municipality, state agency, federal agency be included as the applicant or co-applicant for the use of pesticides in a public body of water. This study was submitted on December 15th, I believe, of 2023, and was not taken up by the legislature in 2024. And so that is the aquatic nuisance control permitting kind of as a whole. And we're going to go through a list of the commenters now who have requested to comment. I have some in person and online. Okay, great. And so for the folks that have already reached out to me, I'm going to call on your name in the order in which I've received your request to comment. And so if you're here in person, great. Feel free to stand up and make your comment, and we'll do our best to answer your question. And if you're online, if you'd like to unmute yourself, that'd be great, and we can go that way. Again, if you're in person, please let me know, and I'll hand my microphone. I think we're going to pass it around the room route. Yeah.
Are we going to start that timer once the microphone is in hand, or are we going to start the timer as it starts?
I think we'll start it once it's in hand. Yeah. The travel time won't be included. Yeah. It's a great question. Thank you. So the first commenter we have is it Lena Crandall? Hi.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I don't think it's on. It is? All right, I'll speak up so folks can hear me. I'm Lena Crandall. I've been a property owner on the lake since 1987. My husband's family has been on the lake since the 1920s. I've been an environmental advocate for over 20 years in my other hometown. I was an appointed member of my Village Conservation Advisory Council. I led a Friends of the Parks group. I was elected to serve as a village trustee, and I was honored by my local Audubon chapter. In other words, over the years, I have had to study various non-native invasive species as well as ways to control them. I understand the negative reaction whenever a chemical application is suggested. I have learned, however, that with any non-native aggressive weed like Eurasian milfoil, that there isn't any other effective means to keep them under control. It's just like taking antibiotics for a bacterial infection. It's safe as long as the medicine is targeted for the specific problem and the correct dose is administered. Every reliable internet source ending in .gov or .edu supports this approach to controlling milfoil. We simply can't go back to allowing this noxious weed to spread. According to the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, which is a reliable source, quote, the dense beds create habitat for disease-carrying insects, including mosquitoes and parasites that cause swimmers itch. The quote continues, I'll spare you. I can send you the article if you like. Thankfully, the Lake St. Catherine Association has been successfully fighting back the milfoil mats while keeping up with the best science-based management practices and strictly following all federal and state regulations. The use of the EPA-approved ProcellaCOR is outlined in the proposed permit to fight Eurasian milfoil is a reasonable and necessary step to maintain the health and safety of Lake St. Catherine. Many thanks to the Lake St. Catherine Association for their years of volunteer work, I stress volunteer work, to protect the lake. And many thanks to you, sitting here, from the state, for your hard work and time spent reviewing this application. Please render a favorable decision to help protect our lake. Thank you.
The next commenter we have is Mary Hassenbeck.
Well, she was much more articulate than I will be, much more organized, but my family's been here 100 years on this lake too, 1920, and we watched in the 70s the deterioration. And we've watched the wonderful improvement these last 5 years. And what I want to do is say thank you to the association and request everyone become a member, add contributions. We've tried to add contributions each year to help this environmental. And I'll just reiterate everything you said. That's much better than repeating it all.
You did great.
The next commenter we have is Jody White.
Can I ask questions and then make a statement? Or
sure.
Well, can I ask the question? Like, they might be quick, or should I just start statementing?
I would go ahead and start, and then we'll get to your questions afterwards.
All right. First of all, I'm against the use of herbicide in the lake. I think it's doing pretty well as is, and it seems like even without using herbicide, the milfoil is kind of only increasing very slightly, at least currently. We've seen in other lakes, notably Bombazine up the road, that without herbicide, there's a lot less milfoil just this year. So I feel like we could be at a point where it makes sense to sort of see where things go without putting more herbicide in. And anyway, let me see if I can find some questions here. In the milfoil budget part, or sorry, the cost part in the application, basically every year, from what I can tell, you're planning on spending more money on the herbicide treatment than suction harvesting. I am sure it's expensive. It seems like it would be great if it was inverse to that, and you were spending a couple $1,000s on herbicide and putting most of that money into the harvesting. I feel like it would be, better from a minimization standpoint. And then I guess on that same minimization note, there really hasn't been. I mean, we're continuing to use it seemingly year after year, and I feel like we could be at a good point to stop. And I'll stop now.
Thank you for the comment. I'm happy to respond to that. As I mentioned before, in 2023, we did not have a treatment. In 2024, we had a small treatment. Every year, when we look at our fall plant survey, then our spring plant survey, which is re-upped in May, and we make a decision at that time whether, based on what we've seen, whether a treatment as a secondary tool only to suction harvesting is necessary. If we get to the point where, like in 2023, things look pretty good and we're confident that the DASH team can control everything that summer, we will not do an herbicide treatment. So it's sort of like we've already built into the process exactly what you're suggesting. But milfoil is a really, really obnoxious plant, and out of nowhere, all of a sudden, it can explode, where in the fall it looked good, in the spring it looks bad, and in that case, we'll need the opportunity to treat it. So in 2023, we didn't do an herbicide treatment. There was no expense. In 2024, I do believe that the DASH cost was higher than the cost of the herbicide. And again, DASH is going to be our primary approach, and we've told the DEC it will continue to be our primary approach. And again, if we have a year where the facts in the milfoil growth show that a treatment is not necessary, then we are in fact not going to do it. But I will note that the idea that we can just stop and milfoil is going to be self-controlling, that plant doesn't do that. And the ability, and I grew up on the lake, 60s and 70s, I was here, and I saw how quickly, you remember somebody brought in a boat with 2 plants, and all of a sudden the entire shoreline is choked by 1979, and that's when we started using the harvesting machines. But the goal is to use, again, suction harvesting as our primary tool. If there's a year where we think the herbicide is not needed, then we're not going to. So it's not just a knee-jerk reaction to put it in. The goal is to see if the dive team can cover it all, and it's when they can't, like in 2024 versus 2023, when we had no treatment, that's when we'll do it.
Hey, Jody? Yeah, we haven't met, but we've been in meetings before. So I think it was less than a year ago, you had participated and I had participated in the study committee meeting. And so just now you just said that you thought the lake looked pretty good. During that meeting, you told the committee that Lake St. Catherine was the worst it's ever been. So I just wondered if you could clarify that.
Hold on. Have about a minute.
Yeah. What was it in reference? What was it in reference to?
Well, we were in a study committee meeting with all the folks. And at the end, there was only comment period. And you said that Lake St. Catherine looked the worst it's ever been. I mean, you can look at the video.
I guess I'll go look at the video. Well, I think that it could be in reference to a lot of things. That there's a moderate amount of milfoil in the lake. There are some parts of the fishing that I think are pretty bad. There are some parts of it that I think are pretty good. And I think, like, visually, I mean, it seems fine. And so I'm not really sure what you're getting at as far as, like, if St. Catherine is good or bad or not.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks for running. And so I'll clarify the pesticide minimization measures. That is a requirement in the permit is to reduce the amount of pesticides that are used from year to year. And the applicant is required to report on that and report on how they're going to do that next year. And so I believe that since the beginning of the start of the use of ProcellaCOR, the Lake St. Catherine Association has reduced the amount of herbicides they have used, and they continue to reduce the amount of herbicides that are being used. I'll note that we have this protection in for up to 60% of the littoral zone, and the proposed treatment acreage is significantly smaller. I believe the littoral zone in Lake St. Catherine in all three basins is somewhere around 449 acres, and I believe somewhere around 3.5% of the littoral zone was managed this year in 2024, and so that should just be clarified. Hold on.
So the only way that people online can hear is through this mic, okay?
I'm sorry for butting in, but I just need a point of clarification. When you say pesticide, do you mean herbicide, or is pesticide something else?
Sorry, thank you for pointing that out. I realize I use the term interchangeably. In my head, they mean essentially the same thing. Pesticide is a catch-all term that includes things like herbicide, algicides, fungicides, any asides that manage a pest or something like that. So when I use the term pesticide in this instance, I am referring to ProcellaCOR. And so anyways, yeah, that's the response there that I have for pesticide minimization. Again, the applicant is required to reduce the amount of pesticides that they use annually and are required to use non-chemical control methods instead. All right, our next commenter that we have is David Emmons.
It seemed like the next 4 years that the dollar amounts for the herbicide was either the same or it was increasing. So could you just take a look at that page? It's in the application. I was on the board of Lake St. Catherine Association for 10 years, president of the Lake St. Catherine Conservation Fund for 10 years. I've lived on the lake for 30 years, and thousands of hours of research on lake ecology and lake restoration. To the findings that have to be arrived at in order to approve this permit, there are no reasonable non-chemical alternatives. There are plenty of reasonable non-chemical alternatives. And so you cannot, DEC, arrive at that finding. Here's an example right here of a suction dredge that will go down, take out a milfoil bed, pump it through a hose to a dewatering bag on shore and do a better job than suction harvesting does. Now, the DASH program is incredibly successful. You guys are doing a fabulous job with that. You want to turn it on steroids, do that. State's got plenty of money that it's spending in the watershed. We can find some money to get ourselves a suction dredge. As far as non-target species goes, I just want to read some of the information. Can you hold that microphone for me? Thank you, ma'am. From the fact sheet from the chemical itself. Section 6 on the data sheet, accidental release measures. So if spills or discharges of this herbicide make their way to natural waterways, they're likely to kill aquatic organisms, prevent them from entering into soil, ditches, sewers, waterways, and underground water. Section 12 talks about ecological information, toxicity to fish. The material is practically, underline practically, non-toxic to fish. So I'd like to know, how do we determine practically? These are serious questions, by the way, okay? How do we determine practically? What does the study look like? Where are the studies? I want to know the studies. I want to see studies cited for these claims in this fact sheet that say it's practically non-toxic to fish. Where are the studies? What were the parameters? And what were the, okay, I'm going to go past that one. Material is slightly toxic to aquatic invertebrates. The Lake St. Catherine Conservation Fund received a denial to an expansion of an aeration permit once. In that denial, and I'll quote, "The air bubbles rising from the bottom of the lake to the surface of the lake could negatively impact the aquatic invertebrates and throwing the entire food web out of balance." So if the bubbles can do that, I wonder what this chemical can do. 10 seconds, my God. And California has a law for safe drinking water, and this product does not, this product contains a chemical known to the state of California to cause birth defects and reproductive harm. And I'll end with just one quick thing, might not be on tape, but EPA has approved a lot of chemicals over the years and then banned them later on. That's a list of chemicals once approved by the EPA that are now banned. Okay, that's 100. Okay.
All right. So yeah, in response to suction dredging, that's something that there's currently, it's similar, but it's not a suction dredge. Hydro raking is a similar process.
That doesn't take the material out of the lake. The suction dredge, that's why I did that specifically.
Sure.
Takes the material out of the lake, pump through a hose into a dewatering bag that's later unzipped. Let the critter fall back into the lake.
So. Sure. So again, this is something that if an application came through would be reviewed under not these statutory findings, but another set within 10 VSA 1455. And so.
My point was you can't arrive at a finding that says there are no non-chemical. I'm not talking about applying for a permit. I'm saying how can the DEC arrive at a finding that says there are no non-chemical alternatives when there are?
So again, the agency has reviewed an integrated pest management plan that includes things like diver-assisted suction harvesting, benthic barriers, mechanical harvesting that occurs on Little Lake with the Lake St. Catherine Conservation Fund. And so
I'm sorry, we can't have the back and forth like this. So what I would encourage you to do, sir, is to submit your entire comment in writing so that then we can, and we have a record of it as well verbally so that we can respond later because we want to be able to get through everybody.
And in response to the EPA, again, the EPA has approved the use of this pesticide. It's registered with the Vermont Agency of Agriculture. And then again, the active and inert compounds are all reviewed by the Vermont Department of Health. as well as an environmental toxicity study being done by the Monitoring and Assessment Program within the Department of Environmental Conservation, which again found low concern in regards to amphibians, aquatic invertebrates, fish, and the like. And so that, again, that's how the agency has come to that conclusion. And it will certainly come out with a much longer response in our response summary for this meeting. All right. Great. So next question or next commenter that we have is Susan Wilson. They here online. Susan, are you with us online? I don't see her name. Susan, if you are online, either unmute yourself or if you've called in, I see there are a handful of phone numbers here. If you press, I think it's the number 6 on your keypad, *6, it should unmute yourself. I'll give you a couple seconds here to try to figure it out. No. Okay. Susan, if you are with us, I'm not able to hear you in person. I don't see you coming up here on our computer either. But please feel free to submit your comment either to me in email or yeah, it says Susan Wilson is the name that I have. Yeah. Maybe that is you then. Yeah, no, I might have copied that. I don't know if that's you. Yeah, that might have been you. I might have copied that over wrong. Great. Okay. Well, I'll hand the mic over to you.
I feel like I have my back to it. Oh, sorry, Dan. Good evening. Good evening. I'm Sue Williams. My family came to this area in the 1800s and in 1908 purchased a house on Lake St. Catherine. And that cottage has been in the family ever since. I've been a long-term member of the Lake St. Catherine Association and a board member since 2022. For all that may divide us today at this hearing, I believe that we all share a common bond of love for Lake St. Catherine. I have had a front row seat to the arrival of Eurasian milfoil, the era of Hungry Harvey and other harvesters, and the discontinuation of the program in 2003 when it became apparent that harvesting was not the answer. Dense weed mats made swimming and boating difficult and unpleasant, and water clarity continued to decline. A 5-part program was subsequently implemented by the Lake St. Catherine Association, including spot treatment of the lake with ProcellaCOR. Excellent strides have been made in containing the milfoil and improving water clarity. And once again, the lake can be enjoyed by boaters, swimmers, kayakers, and anglers. But there is still work to be done. Vermont has always had among the strictest guidelines in the country for the use of herbicides in lakes and streams. I have read the safety and toxicology studies on ProcellaCOR. I believe in evidence-based science. I trust the experts, and I support the approval of this permit. I would request that anyone who opposes this approval, that you ask yourself whether your opinions are based on fact or are a response to inflammatory language on social media and other communications. No one in this room wants to poison the lake. I ask that you read the studies, that you examine the science, and you come to your own conclusions, based not on hearsay, but on legitimate scientific studies. Thank you.
Can I ask folks, please, while people are talking, to be respectful of others and please quiet your comments and your back conversations. If you do need to have a conversation, please go out in the hall so we're not disrupting people that are here. Hold on to it.
Well,
oh, yeah.
I need to, yeah. Our next commenter is Lynn Gee. No.
Hello. I do want to thank all those who are working in a public service capacity, as was pointed out, and putting in extra hours. And I also want to commend the Lake St. Catherine Association for the heavy use of non-chemical alternatives to herbicide. I live on Bombazine. I'm old enough to be older than the Lake St. Catherine Association in 1953 and Lake Bombazine Association. I was born in 1952. I live on a property on Bombazine in the family since 1938. So I have seen a lot of lake history. I firmly believe that herbicides should be used as a last resort. And at what point you decide that's the last resort, I don't have the answer to that. It was pointed out that do you reach a point where maybe you don't have to use the herbicide? They've been putting herbicides into St. Catherine for 20 some odd years, I believe. And each lake is different. I happen to notice that in 2 spots in these presentations, you pull up a photo of Lake Iroquois, but yet you're making people aware of what can happen, what milfoil can do. I'd like to know real specific information on what is happening before a permit is approved. I'm going to read something from Dr. Anthony Fauci, who probably knows a little bit about public health. I just read his autobiography. My questions had to do with mitigation and how you prove that your plan, and there's been questions asked in that. I'll probably submit some written comments. But this is Dr. Anthony Fauci. We all agree that we should rely on science. People associate science with absolutes that are immutable, when in fact science is a process that continually uncovers new information. As new information evolves, the process of science allows for self-correction. The biological or health sciences are, maybe I can turn my phone. Ooh, maybe this would be better. Whoops, don't waste time here. The biological or health sciences are different from the physical sciences and mathematics. With mathematics, 2 + 2 = 4 today, and 2 + 2 will equal 4 from 1,000 years from now. Not so with the biological sciences. Excuse me. Get a little bigger for the old eyes here. Where what we know continues to evolve and uncertainty is common. This uncertainty is magnified in the context of this is to discuss a pandemic, but we saw the list of EPA registered, not approved, but registered chemicals, and then we know those were the lists that are no longer being used. So just please, when you say something can happen, yes, it can, but each lake is different. Each year is different. We don't know why the milfoil declined in Bombazine. We don't know if it's because for 3 years they did some extensive mechanical harvesting. We don't know if there's some of the weevils. We just don't know. There's so much to be learned when you make these really important decisions. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and I think we'll respond to those ones in our response summary. Our next commenter we have listed is Mary Jo Teeter.
Thank you, and thanks for everybody for attending tonight. I too am a resident of Lake St. Catherine. I've been involved with the association since probably about 2000, on the periphery long before that. I got involved when we did the sonar treatment because there was a lot of heavy work to be done just to get that process going and approved. Our pesticide use on this lake has never been taken lightly. I think we've gone through reviews and we've used expert advice from a lot of different directions. Our management program began with weed harvesters. We couldn't keep up with it. We had 2 full-time harvesters, we had a transporter, we had a full-time crew, we had dump trucks. It just got to the point where I live at the north end of the lake. You could literally walk on water. I almost lost a dog swimming in it because they were getting tangled up in it. The clarity of the water with milfoil was better out in the main lake at the time because it does absorb nutrients, but the lake was becoming unusable. And it took a lot of years for the association to go down the path of considering any sort of a herbicide treatment. And we have integrated as many different tools. It's a tool. It's one of the many tools in the toolbox that we use. I think we all stand by the fact that weed harvesting was not successful. It continues to be a problem because of the debris that comes out. Every little fragment of milfoil that gets loose roots itself, so it's a never-ending cycle. And we're never going to eradicate it. But I'll tell you that I have a lot of fishermen that park out in the front of my place in the summertime. They seem to catch a lot of fish, but 30 years ago, there was not a fish to be had there. They were just being suffocated. There was no oxygen in the water. It was a real problem. Doing something like a dash on steroids with hydro dredging is indiscriminate. It wouldn't just take milfoil out, it would take everything out. So I'm not really sure that that's practical, not only practical, but extremely expensive. We tried hydro raking. They decided that that was another process that was taking out too much, not just milfoil. As far as the lake doing well, it's doing well today, for sure. It was not doing well 30 or 40 years ago. It was becoming a real problem. Property values were low. Look at property values now. Let's see. Becoming inverse cost-wise, we spent about the same this year on ProcellaCOR as Dash. The year before, we spent 0 on ProcellaCOR. So I think we're trending in the right direction.
Thank you. The next person I have is Dave Johnson. Yeah. I don't know if Dave is here. Is he online?
Yeah, can you
Dave,
hear me?
are you on? Oh, okay. Hold on one second. Let me unmute myself.
All set?
Thank you so much. Thanks. Yes,
So
you
I'm
are all
here
set to go,
representing.
Dave.
Okay, thanks, Owen. I'm here representing the Board of Directors of the Federation of Vermont Lakes and Ponds. The Federation is a statewide coalition of volunteer lake associations and individuals dedicated to fostering environmental quality standards and to the protection and preservation of Vermont's lakes, ponds, watersheds, and aquatic ecosystems. I'm here today to speak in support of Lake Catherine Association's application for a permit to use ProcellaCOR to control the infestation of Eurasian water milfoil. The Federation's board studied this issue, and you can find a 25-page white paper on this topic, among other policy statements, on vermontlakes.org. If allowed to grow out of control, Eurasian water milfoil can and will do lasting damage to aquatic ecosystems, resulting in loss of habitat for wildlife, reduction in water quality, and economic loss, both in property values and recreational opportunities. Milfoil infestations can be controlled. This is important to do first for the health of the aquatic habitat of a particular lake, but also to prevent its spread to other uninfested lakes. Controlling milfoil infestations is complicated and expensive. The best method is for a lake association to develop an integrated pest management plan that strategically deploys the control tools that are approved by the state of Vermont. And this is precisely what the Lake St. Catherine Association has done. This plan includes the use of ProcellaCOR, the only aquatic herbicide permitted for use in Vermont. Vermont has one of the strictest permitting processes. And if you can see from the permit process presented by the Lake St. Catherine Association, the state requires thorough research and careful planning before a permit can be approved. The reason that the use of ProcellaCOR is necessary in the control plan developed is because other means are not adequate to address Eurasian water milfoil infestation of any size. As have been shown repeatedly over several decades, at Lake St. Catherine, as well as many other lakes in Vermont, hand pulling and mechanical removal, such as Dash, are neither adequate nor effective against large infestations. A good example is the lake that I'm from, Lake Dunmore. For many years, Dunmore owned and operated up to 4 Dash boats for an entire summer season. After spending more than $100,000 per year over more than a 10-year period, the Lake Dunmore Fern Lake Association recognized that the milfoil infestation was continuing to grow and spread despite our best efforts. As a result, in 2014, the association
Dave,
applied
you've got
for
15
herbicide
seconds. Sorry.
permit.
You're good. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so I think we very much believe that the use of herbicides, and particularly ProcellaCOR, is an essential tool for the long-term control of milfoil.
Thank you, Dave. Up next, we have John Belnavis.
Thank you. My name is John Belnavis, and I would like to speak in support of the efforts by the Lake St. Catherine Association to control milfoil in the lake. My wife and I purchased a vacation home on the lake in 2002. Our lakefront was dominated by milfoil then, and it was only through the diligent work of our retired neighbors who raked and removed the milfoil during the week that we could enjoy our weekends in Vermont. A few years later, the decision was made by the Lake Association to treat the lake with herbicide, and for the past 20 years, there has been a dramatic reduction in the amount of milfoil present, which has led to a much better experience pertaining to lake activities. For the past 9 years, I've been a trustee on the board of the Lake Association, with my term having expired in August of this year. I have been the Garita coordinator for the last 7 years, and have witnessed the results of the treatments as it relates to the amount of milfoil in the lake. When we were not treating Little Lake in 2016 to 2020, the amount of the invasive plant on the boats coming out of the water would increase drastically in August till the end of the year. After treatment began in Little Lake, while there was still milfoil present, it was not crowding out the native plants as much in the past, and you could see that because it was present on the a lot of the boats and props when they came out of the water. My final point relates to the fishing activity on the lake. During my time scheduling the greeters for weekends and other busy periods, the amount of fishing tournaments has remained constant. The same organizations, such as the Rutland Bass Club, Night Stalkers Bass Club, and Fish Wednesday Night Trail, come back to hold events year after year. They must see some benefit to fishing in Lake St. Catherine, and as such, the parking lot at the boat launch during these events is not only populated, but crowded by trailers from Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey. As one of the almost 400 members of the Lake St. Catherine Association, I urge the state to grant a permit to treat the lake to control milfoil. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Up next, we have Dave Weaver, who I believe is here somewhere. Oh, he's back there. Sorry.
Thank you. Hi, my name is David Weaver, and I'm a resident and property owner on Lake Cortonia in Sudbury, Vermont. I have been involved with the Lake Cortonia ecology team for more than 20 years. I am fully in favor of Lake St. Catherine's permit renewal process, specifically for ProcellaCOR. The Vermont DEC, under guidance of the agency, a lot of this is repeat of what Olin presented, but Vermont DEC, under guidance of the Vermont Agency of Natural Resources, has defined permit application requirements and processes in place, particularly for chemical treatments. This includes a set of 5 findings that must be met, and there is science behind the decisions before a permit is issued. And I think there needs to be clarification on one of those findings. It's actually no reasonable non-chemical methods. And some of these other methods are just not reasonable financially or others. Anyway, CPRO has gone through a 20-year process of getting the product ProcellaCOR registered with the FDA, or the federal EPA, excuse me. This was completed in 2018. The product label allows up to 25 PDUs, or 50 parts per billion, of the preferred, and the preferred dosage is only 4 PDUs, which is about 7.7 parts per billion. The drinking water health advisory for fluoroperoxyfen benzyl, which is the active ingredient, is over 400 times higher than the proposed concentration in the treated areas, and 60 times higher than the highest use allowed by the label, which is that 25. which we never get close to. ProcellaCOR is not a toxin, but rather a plant growth hormone. The state of Vermont Health Department state toxicologist has sent out several letters of approval for ProcellaCOR use. I quote, based on a review of the confidential statement of formulation, it is reasonable to conclude that human exposure to the inert compounds contained in ProcellaCOR at the concentrations that would result under the conditions proposed by the applicants is not likely to result in any increase in the level of concern for public health. In closing, I would ask and urge those that are opposed to the processes, procedures, science, and ultimately the use of the safest herbicide there is to use, do your own homework, look at the science, and don't be a parrot repeating the falsehoods being spread around rather than come up with your own conclusions and do your own research. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Up next, we had Bob Stannard, who unfortunately had to leave, but he's handed me his comments, and I'll respond to them in the and during the response summary when a final decision is drafted. After that, we've got Robert Short. I'm not sure if they're here in person or online. Oh, right there. Great.
Yeah, I'm Bob Short, property owner on Little Lake. 5 years ago, I asked for the safeguards to be put in place to protect against any negative impacts on the fishery, humans, or ecosystem. The safeguards are as follows: dissolved oxygen testing, especially during the respiration period, core sample testing for trace elements of chemicals, spot checking wells for trace elements of chemicals, looking for hybrid or chemical resistant milfoil, and macroinvertebrate and fish surveys, and chemical drift and flow analysis. A side note on that, the dissolved oxygen testing, the Lake St. Catherine Conservation Fund this past June installed 2 automatic monitoring stations for dissolved oxygen. The preliminary results of those are not looking good. You really need more than 4 milligrams per liter. Otherwise, you have a problem with fish kills and stressing the fish. And our numbers are showing from June, July, and August, there are areas that are under 0.1 milligram per liter. And the final test results on that will be distributed to the state by the end of this year. Let's switch over to Lake George Association. They're similar to our lake system. They have the Parks Commission that wanted to install ProcellaCOR in their lake. They did that earlier this summer. Lake George Association lost that battle, and so they decided to initiate a sophisticated scientific studies program. And that program covers all the safeguards that I have been trying to get the state to implement for the last 20 years. The initial results of their studies are showing chemical drift, release of nutrients, increase of filamentous algae, increased inorganic matter, degradants, which are chemical byproducts, also trace elements. The predominant one of which is also known to be a herbicide, and they were found in the sediment samples in both treatment area and the dilution zones. Now, if we used the safeguards 20 years ago, we way ahead, we'd have all the answers right now, but we didn't do that. So I'm going to ask the permitting agency, are you going to implement the safeguards if this permit is approved? I also like to know if you're going to accept the use of bioaugmentation and spot dredging to offset internal nutrient loading, and are you going to reconsider aeration to stabilize dissolved oxygen and benefit the health of the fisheries?
Thank you for your comment. I can't answer all of those questions here and now, but I'm happy to during the response summary. Again, any new aquatic nuisance control applications are all reviewed under the same statutory findings. Again, they're slightly different for non-pesticide applications. But again, we look forward to hearing the Lake George Association's results. We work very closely with all of the surrounding neighboring states and their agencies that use ProcellaCOR and other methods of control for invasive species. And we really look at them for guidance and for support in this. And their data is incredibly important. A handful of studies from New York are posted on our website, specifically regarding macro invertebrates. I believe they came out of one of the rivers in New York where they did a study. But again, I'll respond to all of those comments in the response summary. So thank you. All right, and then the last person that I have signed up preliminarily is Rob Steele, who I believe is not here tonight. At least that's what I was told. So I'm going to move over to folks that have signed up either online or in person. As of writing, I don't have any online requests, but I do have a handful of folks who have requested to sign up to comment. A handful of you guys have already spoken, so I'm going to skip over John Belnavis, David Emmons, Bob Short, Bob Stannard, and I'm going to pass it over to, is this Stu Dittmeyer? Great.
Thank you very much. I grew up around Lake St. Catherine, and I've been privileged for the last 35 years to live full-time on the lake. And as so many of you, we've witnessed the various attempts to try to clean up the milfoil and some of the other aspects of the lake. And my observations have been that I don't think I've ever seen the lake look better. I commend the work that the association does and that the state does to ensure the quality and longevity of our lake. We're privileged to have our children and our grandchildren spend time in the lake, whether it's boating, swimming, fishing. It's an amazing resource, and we're privileged to be there. I must also comment that once a year we decide to take a trip down into the little lake and navigate our way down there with our boat to some dismal results. And it's clogged props, and you turn around and try to get out of there without burning the motor out. So whatever's happening there isn't working as it is on the big lake. And so we encourage everybody to take a positive response to the permitting that's been put forth and continue the great work that you've been doing. Thank you.
All right, I just want to remind everyone, we have about 30 minutes left for this meeting. If we don't get to you today, please send me an email. My business cards are sitting around somewhere. But please feel free to send me an email with your comments, or you can submit them through the environmental notice bulletin as well. I believe the deadline is December 2nd, so just so everyone's aware. And so our next commenter is Ruby Matches. Great.
Hold on a second. We don't want people online yelling at us, because they can't hear.
The piece of equipment that you were mentioning, has that been tried? Has there been a time when it's been tried? And can people that are members of the association earmark their funding to get that piece of equipment and give it a try, give it a test? That's all I have to say.
We have not reviewed a permit application for the use of suction dredging in a lake or pond in regards to aquatic nuisance control permitting. To my knowledge, in its history, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have a lot of documentation going back to the 60s regarding this. So that's not a promise that we've never reviewed it. if an application were to come through for something like that again, it would go through the same aquatic nuisance control permitting process. It would still not need to find the same statutory findings. Dredging is not something that's typically favored in Vermont. As many folks know, rivers are typically no longer dredged due to the impact. The removal of sediment and such completely removes any aquatic life within that area. Again, it would have to go through a full internal review. But it's something that obviously the agency, anybody can apply for anything, and the agency is willing to review. The next comment we've got is Michelle Bates. Maybe? Oh, back there.
So, as you know, my husband and I own Wellsmere Farm. We own the most lake frontage of anybody on the Big and Little Lake. So I want to know the exact ingredients in ProcellaCOR and the amounts and percentages of each ingredient. I do not necessarily trust the scientists. I want to know myself because I want to study it. Years back, somebody from the Lake Association came to us, and I can't remember, I think it was sonar, but I can't remember exactly. They came to the farm and they wanted us to allow the dumping of weeds on our farm. So I did a lot of research, and I found out that that chemical was prohibitive to lactating animals. Number one, we own a farm. We have lactating animals. We lease some of our farm to farmers that feed their cows. I raise vegetables to feed humans. So I said, no, this is not a good fit. So I went back to the person who had contacted me, and I explained why we were saying no to that. He had not a clue that this chemical was detrimental to lactating animals. Now, if I could find that information, then why couldn't they? So what I would like to know is, I would like to know exactly what's in ProcellaCOR, all of it, the inert ingredients and the main ingredient, and I want to know what percentages.
So I'll note that the registration for ProcellaCOR and all pesticides that are registered with the Environmental Protection Agency have something called a confidential statement of formulation. That's something that the state does not have control over. It's a federal confidential statement of formulation. And so the Vermont Department of Health has reviewed it. The Monitoring Assessment Program has reviewed it. But I'm going to hand it over to Mark Bellowd with Solitude, who's the applicator for this, to potentially speak on it more.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't know if I can add much more. That is correct. We get the permits to use the product, but the manufacturer is the one that gets it registered. So probably the best source of information for you to go to would be the registration documentation at EPA, and that is all available online, and it has what has been submitted to EPA. But there is still probably some confidential formulation, how it's mixed, what the percentages are, and they don't, that's part of they review the whole compound when they review it for toxicity, but they don't release the way that it's mixed and formulated to the public specifically.
All right, thank you. I think our next do we have any time left?
So in other words, you're telling me, no, you will not tell me. Yeah, I'll note that
Myself, I am not allowed to review the confidential statement of formulation. Again, it's a federal registration. It's much above me. However, the Vermont Department of Health and our monitoring assessment program have reviewed the confidential statement of formulation, and again have found considerably low impacts to non-target environment, and then essentially no impact to human health at the rates proposed for treatment. Sorry. So, all right. So our next commenter is Thomas Bates.
Here you go, Tom.
I'd like to give my time to Kevin.
So my name's Kevin DeSanto. I run Wellness Fishing Adventures. We obviously fish the lake very often, probably on the lake more in the summer than most people are. And we've noticed a drastic change in the fishing. The fishing has dropped off immensely in the last 5 to 6 years, immensely. We're losing it. And what I don't understand is how are we not doing studies to see what's happening to the lake? We continue to dump chemicals into the lake without studying what the effects are. And I've had this discussion with Jeremy Jones, and he admitted to me that we're not studying enough to see what the results are of this chemical. It hasn't been around long. You didn't say that to me? Well, there you go. What's the difference? You wish we could do more. We can do more. We can do more. But we're not doing more. And exactly, money. It shouldn't be money. This is about people's health. The long term this is water we're dumping these chemicals into. The long-term effect, we don't know what it's going to be. How long has this chemical been out? Since 2019? That's nothing. No one knows what the effects are going to be, but yet we're not even studying to check to see. That's the issue. That's where most people are having a problem. If you guys can show us studies that everything's fine, people will be okay with it, but you're not giving us that. You're giving us nothing, or you're saying we don't have the funding. Come on, state of Vermont. This is an environmental friendly state, but yet we're allowing toxic chemicals to be dumped into our water. That doesn't sound environmentally friendly to me. I'm a contractor. I can't cut a branch off a tree within 250 feet of the water's edge without getting it approved. But it's okay to dump toxic chemicals directly into the water. Please make that make sense to me. I don't understand it. That's where I'm having an issue.
Thanks for your comment. Regarding fishing in Vermont, or in Lake St. Catherine specifically, the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Division is the department that we rely on for reports regarding fisheries and how any management project, not just the use of ProcellaCOR, but any management project may impact fisheries. And the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department has concluded that, again, fishing has not decreased. The study that the study was released in 2022, I believe, in their bass inventory reporting. And so again, that study directly from Vermont Fish and Wildlife states that it hasn't decreased, it's just changed. And great. And again, any reports that you have, we recommend bringing in Vermont Fish and Wildlife, because again, they're the folks that we rely on for fisheries. That's. I completely understand you. Sure. Sure. Yeah, and I'll respond to this. Yeah, so the photos, can you hand me those, please? The photos that we've received these. We reached out to Vermont Fish and Wildlife about this. Their initial response is that it's something called red sore disease, which is a catch-all for a bacteria. And so, again, this is what Vermont Fish and Wildlife has stated. I followed up with them just this past week, and they weren't able to get into Lake St. Catherine this year to do a follow-up study. But if more reports are being found, they plan on coming out with their state fisheries toxicologist to follow up on anything. Again, these are all reports that come from Vermont Fish and Wildlife that we rely on for this.
Okay, I'd like to ask that people remain civil, and if you have a comment or a follow-up, we will get the microphone to you, because there's a lot of people online that cannot hear the back and forth. We also want to minimize the back and forth because we want to give everybody an opportunity to say something, and we want to be able to respond in a careful and considerate way. So.
Thanks, Shannon. Jeremy, did you have something to add?
Yeah, just real quick, Kevin, we had a great conversation last time. You know, I thought we had a good talk. You know, we interacted online, if you recall, about this issue. You posted the photos. I told you I will reach out to Fish and Wildlife because I'm concerned about it too. Right? So I fished this lake since I was a kid. This year, I was out fishing more than I've ever had. I participated in the Master Angler Program this year. Look me up. You can see the fish I caught that were of exceptional size for their species. And so, sorry, I got sidetracked there. I took your photos. I sent them to, as you know, I sent them to our contacts at Fish and Wildlife. They got back to me, and even before I sent them, I told you it was most likely red sore disease. I sent them the photos. They got right back to me and said, our fish biologist thinks it's red sore disease caused by a bacteria. They would be happy to come out at some point to check it out because we're concerned about it as well. But then what you do is you post those and say they're burned by the herbicide. How, and I'm sorry, I'm getting a little upset. Okay.
We can't, excuse me, we can't have the back and forth, okay? All right, yes, let's have a conversation after the meeting, yeah. Let's move on.
Thanks, everyone. So the next two commenters that signed up have also already commented. Laurel Gilman. Wait, okay, back there.
Hi, I'm Laurel Gilman. I've been on the lake 41 years as a homeowner, have been visiting it for 60 plus. Everybody talks about the fish. Okay, I'm all right with that. We need to make sure everything is protected. What about the children? Whose kids are swimming in this lake and don't have a concern about the poison, the herbicides that are going in? It's more than just the fish. It's human health. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Sure. I just would like to say, why did the signs go from a size this big that said, hey, be aware, we put chemicals in this lake, don't let your kids swim in it, to something that's about this big and it sits in the grass and nobody sees it? I see kids coming from all over different states who are housing next to us, you know, the Airbnb thing, and they're swimming in it. And I know it says, oh, well, the renter was supposed to tell them. They're not going to tell them. They're not even there. Where are the signs that are warning them? Not these little postcards that are stuck in the grass that are mowed over and nobody sees them. It's not right. How can anyone let little kids swim in that when nobody even knows it?
Thank you both for your comments. Firstly, regarding children, again, the Vermont Department of Health has reviewed the compounds that are found in both in ProcellaCOR, and has again found that at the concentrations in which they're proposed, there's little risk to human health. So again, yeah. And then in regards to the signage, that's actually a great point and something I didn't bring up in my presentation. Specifically for this decision, we did increase the size in which signage is required to. I was trying to find it in the permit and I don't. Yeah, I believe it's 11 by 17. Sure, yeah, and again, you know, yeah.
I want to remind everybody that part of the reason that we're having this meeting is to get your comments so that we can incorporate your feedback into the permit. So if you have reasonable and valid points to make about the signage not being big enough or in the right locations or long enough, that's the reason why we're doing this. So we want to get your feedback. And if there's anything that you don't get to say tonight, again, you can reiterate in writing. So yeah.
Great, thanks. All right. And our next commenter that we've got signed up is, oh, Linda's already gone. Joanne Calvi. Go pass, okay. Dave Calvi. Pass, great. And
Ellis is the last name.
Ellis is the last name? Anybody the last name of Ellis? No? Anybody online? Well, they signed up. Yeah, they signed up right here. I would assume that they're still here if they commented. Anybody online with the last name of Ellis that requested the comment? I don't see anybody. They may not be here anymore. Okay. With that in mind, we have 12 minutes left in this public meeting. So the way that this process typically works is we've gone through all of the folks that commented prior. Are you last name Ellis? Sure. Yeah. So the way that this is going to work is we've now gone through the entire list of folks that have signed up to comment. Now we'll open it up to the floor for the next 10 minutes or so. And so folks online, if you have a question, please use the raise your hand function and we'll call on you. We're going to kind of alternate back and forth. Same kind of guidelines apply. You've got 3 minutes, which doesn't leave us much time for much conversation. But we'll try to get through as many folks as possible. If you're in person, just feel free to raise your hand and we'll start right here. And please, whenever you do begin to talk, please state your name for the record so that we have it in our notes.
I don't know.
I'm Joel Pleiner. I live on the last house on the channel before you get to Little Lake, and this year they applied the herbicide down the channel, and about 2 weeks later, you could see the result. It not only killed milfoil, but it killed a lot of lily pads, pickerel weed. I have pictures, and you know, it was significant. You could see those results up and down the channel, you know, where they applied the herbicide. So, you know, there is collateral damage, you know, and that's a concern because the claim is that the you know, the effects are minimal on native species, but you know, I've seen evidence to the contrary, and at some point I'll try to post those pictures so you all can see it. And you know, so that's a real concern. You know, it leads me to question you know, how good the science is. Another comment I have is that the testing, there's testing in the fall. Well, by the fall, most of the weeds are on their way down, especially the milfoil. So if you test in September, you're not going to see milfoil anyway. So, you know. And in previous years, we've seen the milfoil back. Like it's not always back, but by mid to late summer, it's back. So you know, I just question, you know, how effective the studies are that you know, say how effective the treatment actually is. And I realized that on the Big Lake, there's it's a whole different system than what's on Little Lake, and Little Lake has to be handled differently. And I know that people on the Lake Association don't like harvesting. Well, there's not much options. 10 seconds. Oh boy. Okay. Well, anyway, there's not much options on Little Lake, and I've seen. You know, I'm a participant and in the process, and I think that harvesting is necessary to keep navigation lanes open.
I just in a brief response to that, just so you're aware, condition A12C. Which is a new condition and is only found in this draft decision, specifically calls out the impacts, potential impacts to white water lily, Nymphaea odorata, and yellow water lily, which is Nuphar variegata, and that's again to protect the rare species that was found that uses those lily pads for its juvenile stages, part of its reproduction. And so I'll note that we do know that lily pads are sensitive to ProcellaCOR, and that's part of these permitting requirements is part of the implementation of this permitting requirement is to try and protect those sensitive species.
You know, I'm sort of torn.
So.
Hold on.
Yeah. You know, I like the lily pads. You know, they're beautiful, and the pickleweed is beautiful. On the other hand, I can see how the lily pads are encroaching on the channel, and if not checked, someday they're gonna choke off the channel. So anyway.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your comments. I just wanted just to get back to you on one of the comments you had about the timing of the plant survey. I think we all agree that doing a survey when the plants are mostly dead is not going to do anyone any good. So even though the report is not prepared and released until later in the fall, the field work that the team will use to do this starts in August. So it's August, early September, later in September when those weeds are still pretty far up there, but we're not going to have them do this work when the plants can't be seen. That's not in anyone's best interest. So we totally understand the comment, and we're totally on the same page with that. So thank you.
All right, folks, we have about a couple minutes left. I'll have a quick closing statement. I'm going to pass it over to anybody online that may have raised their hand. I'm trying to alternate between in-person and online here. Just going to make sure that nobody online. Lizzie, do you see anyone online? No. Cool. Okay, great. So we'll pass it over to somebody here in person. I think you're up next.
Yeah, my name is Don Pruce. I'm chair of the Wells Select Board. I have been for quite a number of years. I've sat here and listened. I'm somewhat of a newbie on the lake. I've only been here since 1949. But one of the things that I've noticed, obviously this is a public hearing to do with the use of ProcellaCOR. I think the lake has a lot more problems than ProcellaCOR. You have people that are building $1 million homes with 4 or 5 bedrooms, putting a garage across the road with 2 or 3 more bedrooms, which all require bathrooms. You've got a clay formation to create a lake. And no, the sewage isn't necessarily running into it. You have the fertilizer truck coming to many of the homes on the lake weekly, spraying fertilizer on the lawn, and we can't figure out where the phosphates are coming from. Hello. The other thing is, sewerage is not everybody says, oh, I don't have any problem with my septic tank. No. If the little guy disappears, everything is wonderful. Where it disappears to, we don't have public sewers. That would be a good step in the right direction. I spent a lot of time, my wife is from Laconia, New Hampshire. I spent a lot of time on Winnipesaukee and Winnisquam. And every town there is far more closely regulated. They don't use salt around the lakes. A lot of different things that we don't do. Porous driveways, you can't just pave everything and cut every tree down and have a golf course lawn. And their lakes are in far better shape than ours is. And like I say, I'm not a fan of the herbicide. I'm not a fan of the harvester. I've lived through it all. But I think we need to look at the full picture of how to take care of a body of water. Thank you.
Great, thank you for your comments. We have time for maybe one more quick comment. I think if anybody else has something to say, we'll pass to them first. We've got somebody else in the back, and that'll probably be our final comment for the night.
Okay, David Emmons. I'd like to say two things. Don just made a really good point, and that is a point that Bob Short and I have been making for probably over 20 years. And that is that the Department of Environmental Conservation, whether it's A&R, lakes and ponds, there is no proactive management, holistic, sustainable, proactive activity happening at the state level. It's the lake associations that come to the state and ask for approval of permits, and it's never starting at the state level. So that's the reason we don't have a holistic approach. We don't have a sustainable approach. We don't have a state department that's looking into management practices that are effective around the world. We have a state reacting to applications that are being submitted by lake associations or homeowners. And that's not a way to holistically, sustainably manage water bodies in the state of Vermont. It's really ridiculous that it's come to this. There's no law in the state of Vermont that says there has to be a lake association for every lake. These lake associations exist out of a void. There was a void that needed to be filled. And as we fill that void, you have lay people doing the best they can to figure out how to manage these water bodies. I don't agree with everything that is being used. I'm totally against herbicides. But what I am for is managing this water body the right way so that the public is safe, that the fisheries are safe, that the food web is not disturbed, and that we end up with a healthy ecosystem. And it's being done around the world, it's being done around this country, and the state should proactively do something about that and not react to applications. As for the application, you have to arrive at those findings. And I don't think with all the comments made tonight and going to the science, because I spend a ton of time in science, the science on the fact sheet of the chemical itself has enough evidence there for you not to be able to arrive at all of those findings.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for your comment. As the new Lakes Program Manager, I would like to address your comment briefly, just to say that it's not really based in truth. I believe that the 15 people that work for me are dedicated to proactively restore, protect, and enhance the lakes and ponds in our state. The lake associations, what they do and the work that they do is wonderful, and it augments what the state does. But they're the funding that they receive is from the state. Our department funds all the work that they do, and then we have our tactical basin planning and the for each watershed in the state. We look at prioritizing watersheds and lakes and ponds that need work done. We have lake watershed action plans that we produce for every lake or the lakes that we target and prioritize. We have over 800 lakes in the state, so it's a lot of work to be done, and we're very diligent about it. We have a whole monitoring and assessment group that samples the lakes for their health every year and multiple times a year. And that information, the data that we collect, feeds into the tactical basin plans, the lake watershed action plans. What other plans? There's a lot of them. It's not just that's like a small picture. all the work that we do. And I would invite you all to visit our website because it is really extensive. All the information that we have for the proactive work that we do to protect, enhance, and help our lakes and ponds. So I will leave it at that.
So thanks, everyone. I really appreciate everybody coming out tonight. We are at time. Again, all of your comments will be responded to in a response summary when a final decision is made. I don't have a timeline for when that final decision is made. But if you didn't get to speak tonight, please feel free to reach out to me via email or through the environmental notice bulletin. Again, I really appreciate everybody coming out. I grew up fishing Vermont lakes. I grew up near bodies of water here in Vermont. I really value them as a resource and as an environmental, working in environmental conservation is fundamental to this work. And so again, thank you everybody. Thank you for the Lake St. Catherine Association, for Solitude Lake Management for being here today, and for all of the wonderful folks within the Lakes and Ponds program that were here, and all of our folks from the public. Again, feel free to reach out, and yeah, have a good night.
And thank you everybody for coming and your comments. I'm going to hang out. Hey folks. Thank you for coming. I'm going to be hanging out.